Hello, Frost fans. We have another edition of Frost Bites, a playoff edition, a special edition. I am super excited to be joined today by Minnesota Frost rookie forward Abby Hustler. Abby, how the heck are you? Thank you so much for doing this.
Yeah, I'm doing good. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, I realized this week as we were sort of getting ready for this that I've only had defenders on the show, so I'm really excited. I got a forward now. We can talk about fun stuff, offense, goal scoring, all the good stuff.
Yeah, don't count out the forwards.
um, so just to start, like I'm curious how your week's been. You guys have had like a little break here, I guess, between the regular season and playoffs starting against Montreal. I think it'll be about a week in between. Has that been nice for you to kind of, maybe rest and recuperate from the regular season before playoffs? Or have you been kind of itching and ready to go for playoffs to start?
Kind of a little bit of both. I think it's good just because we haven't had that time to really get practicing and get familiar with the teams we've been playing previously. We just kind of been going game, day off, practice, game type deal for the last month, it seems. So, yeah, having these few days to rest, recover, and also just get back to practicing something other than, a before the game practice kind of thing. So yeah, I think it's been good, and obviously we know we're playing the same team multiple games, so I think that that's good that you can kind of key on what they're doing and what you'll have success doing against them and so forth. So I think the practice time has been good, and yeah, we're excited to get there though.
Yeah, I'm sure. And I wonder if those last couple games that you guys had, I know you were pretty locked in for those last three games to your spot and in your playoff spot, and the results maybe didn't go the way you all wanted them to go, but maybe also helpful, I would imagine, to kind of get things ready to go, get things kind of locked in before playoffs.
Yeah, no, for sure. I think coach mentioned a lot, like working on the little details and not necessarily worrying about the outcome. Because at that stage in the season, we were kind of locked in the third. It really didn't matter. So the end of the season games felt like against Vancouver and Seattle, like we did a lot of good things on our West Coast road trip, and it didn't go the way that we wanted it to. But they were playing hard too, and yeah, I feel like. Um, it was good to keen in on the little details, and those are what's going to matter in playoffs. So if we can clean those up a bit beforehand, then it helps us in the long run.
Yeah, for sure. And speaking of playoffs, upcoming Montreal on Saturday. Montreal was the best defensive team in the PWHL in the regular season, gave up the fewest goals. I know in your guys' four games against Montreal, struggled to score some goals. Just, I mean, like everybody did. I'm curious, like from your perspective, what is it about Montreal that makes them so good defensively and like so hard to score goals against?
Yeah, I think they do a lot of hard battling down low. I think that, some teams play different styles, but they are really grindy down low, and they really try to take away your time and space, especially for our top players, right? You got Heisey, Kelly, like those players, they're really working to eliminate our superstars. And so, they've had success in the recent games, and I feel like we had a couple games where we went to overtime where we played well against them. It was just kind of a bounce away, but they sell out to block shots. They do a lot to not let the puck get to Debian. So you kind of try to exploit that in different ways. So we'll be looking to do things a little differently than we did in the previous games, but I mean not much different. We know we have another level to go, and we think that that's going to be good enough to beat them.
Yeah, and I know the results in those games during the regular season, of course, didn't go the way that you wanted to. But as a team, I would imagine you take some confidence in the fact that, like you said, a number of those games were overtime games. You guys had some leads. Montreal got a late empty net goal in one of them. I would imagine there's some confidence in that, knowing that you played them pretty tight in all of those games.
Yeah, and honestly, for me and a lot of others, I don't think if we had a record of 2-2 against them, I don't think that would be much different in our head, right? At the end of the day, I've had the luxury to watch from a fan's perspective the last 2 years, and whatever happened in the regular season, it didn't phase this team. So I think that that's one thing to really be hopeful for, that whatever happened in the regular season, clearly in the PWHL has no influence on the playoffs. So we just got to do our thing, and it'll work itself out.
It's a really great point. It makes trying to preview these series nice and hard because it's kind of like, well, here's what happened, but also the Frost have a penchant for just kind of making things happen in the playoffs. So I don't, who knows what's going to happen. Okay, let's go back a little bit. I wanted to talk to you about your draft day experience. It's wild that is like months ago now, but like, could you just talk about getting drafted in the PWHL and kind of like what that day, what that experience was like for you?
Yeah, it was surreal. Obviously, there's a fun part to not knowing what's going to happen next. And, obviously you have some inklings, but you talk to your agent and see what teams are interested. And yeah, at the end of the day, I really went in there having no clue, even a broad range of where I was going, what team I was going to play for. So, yeah, I think at the end of the day, it's just spending time with friends and family, and, celebrating the career you had so far, and the build up to that moment. So it was really cool. The PWHL did an amazing job with the setup, and, they had players there representing each team. I got to talk to Lee and Nicole, after getting drafted there. So it was really, really fun. And, it was something that a lot of people thought was never possible, to be in a draft like that, and be in a situation, trying to play professional hockey. So yeah, I think a lot of us were just shocked, didn't really know how to feel. It's different when, people say, we've been dreaming of this day since I was little, but at the end of the day, like, we weren't really dreaming of this. A lot of people were like, I want to play in the NHL kind of thing. So yeah, it was just a really cool feeling, and to be around a lot of my former teammates and friends, it was nice.
Yeah, yeah, I totally for you, like, when the league, you were obviously in college when the league was sort of like coming together, like I would imagine that kind of became a goal right away for you of like, okay, here's this place I can go now with my career. Was it pretty quick for you of like, okay, this is where I'm going or what I want, where I want to go?
Yeah, I wouldn't say necessarily, because at the beginning, especially with six teams, felt like there was such good players and such good competition that it was very thin margins to get into the league and get a spot on a team and get ice time, and earn that. So that was something that I kind of, didn't really know. And then, had a good junior and senior year at St. Lawrence. And then that kind of helped me out to gain confidence, to know that, I can put myself in the position against some of the other players in my draft class. So originally, no, it wasn't really in the conversation. But then once, I kept playing, kept developing, then it kind of became a thing.
Yeah. Yeah, and you were or you were the first PWHL player drafted from Prince Edward Island. I would imagine that would made the draft day experience even a little bit more special.
Yeah, no, for sure. I think a lot of people from home were watching, and especially since being drafted and playing and stuff, I think it's brought a lot of eyes. And you know, girls from back home, they have the same opportunities as people from other provinces do, but they just kind of haven't seen someone excel at this point, to the PWHL. So I think it's really nice to have someone to cheer for from their hometown. And I see a lot of them at my hockey camps in the summer, and they're talking about how much they love the PWHL and want to get to games. And even in Montreal, I have a few girls from the island coming to some of the games in Montreal. So like, just little things like that. I don't know too many places that have that kind of connection. It's such a small town, such a tight knit community. So yeah, it's been great, and definitely felt the support from the island.
Yeah, wow, that is so special. That is so cool. Um, okay, also I'm curious. One of the things talking to rookies, but vets as well. Like when you get to the PWHL, the first thing I've heard is just like the speed of the game is just a real difference, and the game is fast, and it takes some getting used to. And I mean, you've played hockey at very high levels, but did you have a moment, maybe like a training camp or in the preseason? Was there a moment you could think of where you were kind of like, oh, okay, wait, this is a different level that's going to take a minute to get used to?
Yeah, no, I think training camp was tough. The first few days. It actually was a little bit weird because the national team girls hadn't quite gotten there for the first couple days. So that was good for the players. Coming in, you kind of get used to a little bit of the speed and the pace before the speed elevates once again. So that was a good, like, booster. And then yeah, like, I wouldn't say I necessarily had like a welcome to the P-Dub moment. The games obviously were so cool with all the fans and stuff, and like that was surreal. You just look over and see that you're playing, and on the bench with players like Kendall Coyne, Taylor Heisey, Kelly Panic, like all these like class A players in the past 10 years. So that part is cool, and you kind of get used to it, I guess, at this point. But still, like, looking back, in 10 years, to be able to say I played with that person will be extremely cool. But now a lot of us just take it for granted, right? Seeing them taking the face off right beside us and stuff like that. So yeah, it's been really good, and it really has developed my game and stuff, having to handle the speed and that kind of thing. But the physicality is also there. I feel like with my size and the way I play, it kind of fits into my characteristics anyway. So that wasn't too much of an adjustment. But yeah, so nothing crazy that no one expected. Right? Everyone said the speed and the physicality is there, and they're not wrong.
Yeah, for sure. Well, you talk about these class A players. I feel like, from the press box, the thing that's been most impressive about your game is the way that you've just sort of like slid into the lineup right alongside these players and been able to have an impact on games all throughout the lineup. Whether it's like scoring goals, setting up goals with a little power play time, or like being a more physical presence, creating turnovers. Like, what do you attribute your success up and down the lineup with so many different line mates? Like, how have you been able to have so much success in so many different roles? I would say.
Yeah, well, I think that whenever you say like versatility and stuff is so important, I truly believe that it is, because some girls can step in and they play a first line role really well, but then if they were moved down the lineup, can't excel at that either. So I think the physicality part helps, getting in on the forecheck and that kind of thing, causing turnovers. But you have to kind of adapt to your style depending on who you're playing with, right? Like, you're playing with two of the top goal scorers in the whole league, you probably won't just dump pucks in the corner and chase, right? So there's a different dynamic to it. It's part of getting used to, and that's kind of the fun part. And I will say, production a lot of the time just depends really on who you're surrounded with, the type of players that you're playing with, and how your line is kind of constructed to produce or to do certain roles. So yeah, I think that playing with those players is a privilege, and I will say they do majority of the work. I just kind of watch from the back, but it's been fun.
Yeah, I mean, I would say you do more than that for sure. I'm curious, like you talked about, maybe not dumping pucks in when you're playing with the top two scorers in the league. But just like in general, are those kinds of things you're thinking about kind of pregame or going into a game when you know the lineup? Are you thinking about that stuff of like, okay, here's who I'm with, here's where we've had success in the past, here's kind of what I'm thinking about tonight in terms of my game? Is that kind of pregame? Is that mid game? Kind of both? How does that work for you?
Yeah, I think it's a little bit of like, a couple days leading up,
Yeah,
you have your lines in practice and like coming up for the playoffs, the line I'm on is more of a heavy style, so you want
yeah,
to get pucks behind their D, and that's the strong suit of the players that I'm playing with, right? So it just really depends. And yeah, we do a lot of stuff with lines in practice and stuff that allow you to get in those situations before the game. But yeah, definitely something that I think about, and like I said, adjust your game for it.
yeah. And you guys, I know the coaching staff. I mean, you guys are shuffling lines pre-game, mid-game. I mean, things are kind of get moving around, and you're playing in a lot of different combinations. What's that like from a player's perspective? Just knowing that lines can change mid-game. Yeah, what's that like for you?
Well, I think it's really good if you do it from the beginning of the year, like Coach Ken has, and I think it gives us the opportunity, when something happens against the other opponent and line matching and stuff, you can really alter your lines depending on that. And then another thing is preparing for the possibility of injuries, right? If you've had the same lines for 3 months and then someone goes down with an injury, you know you're not really used to playing with certain girls. So at this stage, I get switched from left wing to right wing to with whoever, and it's not really surprising, and I've played with those players, so it's not a tough adjustment. Whereas I think on previous teams, when you play um with the same players for 3 months and then you get switched up, it makes it a lot harder to adjust and takes a couple games, where this is like been used to playing with girls, and so that part I do kind of like, and then when it happens mid game, you're just ready for it.
Yeah, I'd imagine you all are very comfortable with that happening and those things changing in games, lines changing, all that stuff. Heading into the playoffs on Saturday, one part of your game, one key that you're really focused on, kind of like I want to make sure I do this thing well on Saturday. What would that be for you?
I think it would be getting in on the forecheck. Like in the NHL playoffs or any other league, like you see the physicality ramp up and the refs kind of put the whistles away a little bit. I'm hoping that's going to be the case, and not be a special teams game, but that would be something. Like I said, our line, we're focused on getting pucks behind them, and I think if you can get in on the forecheck, use your body, go stick on puck, I think that'll have a lot of success in turning pucks over. So that'll be my focus and our line's focus for the game.
Yeah, awesome. It sounds like a good plan. Abby, again, thank you so much for doing this, and good luck the rest of the way.
Thank you. Appreciate it.